The night had already fallen over Brooklyn, draping the city in neon haze and restless murmurs, but inside his cramped studio apartment Michael Collins stitched as if the whole world depended on every thread. The steady hum of his sewing machine drowned out the city's chaos, only to be pierced by the metallic clink of pins clenched between his teeth. The gown before him shimmered beneath the harsh lamp, pale blue chiffon, delicate as a whisper, cruelly illuminated by the light that revealed every imperfection. It was supposed to be perfect, a masterpiece for a client who demanded nothing less. For Michael, perfection wasn't optional. It was his only defense against the nagging voice that haunted him every single day. That voice came alive when the phone rang. Shrill. Relentless. He flinched, pricked his finger, and tasted the metallic tang of blood. Michael, sweetheart, his mother's voice oozed through the receiver, thick with syrup and menace at once. Mary Collins never called without a reason. And her reasons were never small. Don't forget, she continued before he could even greet her. Tomorrow night. Sarah Peterson is coming over for dinner. I've already bought the groceries. Michael closed his eyes, letting the machine's hum fade into silence. He had heard this before. Too many times. The name, Sarah Peterson, was a mantra his mother repeated like salvation. Sarah, the perfect daughter of a man in City Hall, a man whose shadow could stretch over Michael's struggling life and make it easier. Mom, I told you. You'll be 30 soon, Mary snapped, her sweetness gone, her tone sharp as glass. Do you plan to sit there forever with mannequins and scraps of fabric? Even that boy from the next block already has 2 children. Michael's jaw tightened. He stared at the dress in front of him, the careful folds, the fragile beauty he had poured himself into, and felt the insult land heavier than any curse. Mom, I'm 29. And this isn't playing with mannequins. This is my work. I make a living. A living? She scoffed. Money without a wife, without children, without a family, what good is it? Do you want to rot away in that little apartment, sewing dresses for spoiled clients until I die? Is that your plan? The words crawled under his skin like insects. The room grew suffocating. He opened the window, and the sound of the city spilled in, honking cars, laughter from a bar across the street, the faint notes of a saxophone from a subway performer. The city was alive. He was stuck. Sarah is educated, well-mannered, and from a good family, Mary pressed on. Not like your clients who only know how to wave money in your face. Sarah's different. She could give you stability, respectability. Michael gritted his teeth. His heart hammered, and something reckless rose inside him, something tired of being cornered, tired of being diminished. I already have someone, he lied. The words escaped before he could stop them. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Even the street noises seemed to pause, holding their breath. What did you say? His mother's voice finally broke through, sharp and incredulous. I said I have a girlfriend. We've been seeing each other for a while. The lie settled into the room like smoke, acrid and undeniable. Mary's tone turned icy. Then bring her tomorrow. To dinner. Both of you. Sarah will be there too. Michael's blood ran cold. What? Mom. If you don't, she cut him off, her voice ringing with finality, then I'll know you're lying. And I won't tolerate lies from my own son. The line went dead. Michael lowered the phone onto the table as if it weighed 100 pounds. His chest felt hollow. The dress before him no longer looked like a dream. It looked like a shroud. Where could he possibly find a woman in 24 hours willing to play the role of a lifetime? Morning cracked open over New York City with the sound of sirens, honking horns, and the dull grey drizzle that blurred skyscrapers into ghosts. Michael Collins hadn't slept. His lie, only 12 words long, had kept him awake all night, bouncing in his skull like a ricochet. I already have someone. The phrase was poison. Now it had become a noose. He dressed mechanically, shoving his sketchbook and tape measure into his satchel like armor for a war he hadn't prepared for. His mother's ultimatum played over and over in his mind. Bring her, or confess the lie. And tomorrow wasn't a vague threat. It was tonight. By noon he was wandering the streets of Midtown, his hood pulled low, scanning faces in the crowd. Women with dogs, women with coffee cups, women in crisp blazers hurrying toward glass towers. All of them seemed impossibly distant, armored by lives that did not intersect with his. Ask one, he told himself. Just try. At a bus stop, he forced himself forward. Excuse me, The woman jerked back, clutching her purse tighter. Not interested. At a sidewalk cafe, he stumbled through an explanation to a stranger in a floral dress. She listened for 5 seconds before reaching for her phone. Say one more word, and I'm calling the police. By the third rejection, Michael's desperation had curdled into humiliation. He caught his reflection in a store window, the wrinkled shirt, the tired eyes, the nervous twitch of his lips. He didn't look like a man making an offer. He looked like a vagrant begging for scraps of dignity. The city swallowed him whole. Hours slipped away. His phone buzzed with 2 missed calls from his mother, then 3, then 4. He didn't answer. He couldn't. What would he say? Hi Mom, I'm just out here trying to hire a stranger to play my girlfriend. Thanks for checking in. By late afternoon, his wandering feet carried him to the back alleys of Queen's Market. The air here was different, heavy with the rot of discarded produce, soggy cardboard, cigarette smoke curling from the lips of exhausted vendors. He almost tripped over the trash bin before he saw her. A thin woman, bent over the dumpster, sorting through spoiled fruit with deliberate, practiced motions. Her hair hung in greasy strands that might once have been chestnut. Torn gloves exposed pale fingers, quick and precise as they set aside bruised apples into a worn grocery bag. Michael froze. This was insane. Unthinkable. The most absurd idea of the day. And yet. Hey, he said. His voice cracked against the drizzle. She spun, eyes wide, the bag clutched like a weapon. For a heartbeat, fear flashed there, but it was quickly replaced by something sharper, pride. I didn't steal anything, she said. Her voice was clean, startlingly clean, not the rasp he expected from someone digging through refuse. This was thrown away. Michael swallowed. She was younger than he thought. Maybe 30, maybe less. Even beneath the dirt and shadows of exhaustion, there was a structure to her face, a defiance in her posture. And suddenly he knew. This woman, this stranger, this was his only chance. For a long, brittle second, they only stared at each other. Michael with his heart thundering in his chest, the woman clutching her bag of bruised fruit as though it contained diamonds. The drizzle traced silver lines down her hollow cheeks. Her eyes, startlingly clear beneath the exhaustion, narrowed with suspicion. What do you want? She demanded. Michael raised both hands, palms out. Nothing. I mean, not that. His words stumbled. I need help. A harsh laugh escaped her lips, short and bitter. Help. I'm not the Salvation Army. He shook his head, feeling his own desperation pour through the cracks. Not charity. A job. Her eyes sharpened like blades. If you're looking for what I think you are. No. The word came out too loud. He lowered his voice quickly. No. Not that. Just, pretend. Pretend you're with me. For a few hours. That's it. She tilted her head, the damp strands of her hair plastered against her face. Her silence pressed down heavier than words. Michael forced himself to say it. I'll pay. $50. Her jaw tightened. For what? Sitting next to you like some prop. Why me? Because every other woman in this city looks at me like a threat, he wanted to say. Because you're the first one who hasn't already walked away. Because I'm drowning, and you look like someone who knows what drowning feels like. Instead, he muttered, because I don't have anyone else. The rain thickened. She glanced down at the bag in her hands, then back up at him. In her eyes flickered something, not sympathy, but recognition. What's your name? She asked finally. Michael. Michael Collins. She hesitated, then said, Catherine. Catherine Moore. The name felt too graceful for someone standing ankle-deep in trash water. "Okay, Michael Collins," she said, her voice low, laced with challenge. "If I do this, it won't be cheap. $100 up front. And if this is some scam, if you so much as breathe wrong, you'll regret it." Michael swallowed the knot in his throat. "Deal." For the first time, her expression softened into something unreadable. She dropped her bag of fruit to her side and extended a hand, dirty, nails broken, but steady. He took it, and for one sharp instant, he swore he felt an electric current shoot through his skin. The bargain was struck. The rain clung to them all the way back to Michael's Brooklyn apartment. By the time they reached the cracked stone steps, Catherine's thin coat was soaked through, her bag of fruit sagging with water. She stopped at the door, her body taut, ready to bolt. "Relax," Michael said softly. His hand lingered on the key. "It's just an apartment. Not a trap." Her eyes flicked to his, searching for deceit. After a long, tense breath, she gave a slight nod. The hallway smelled of laundry detergent and old paint. Inside his unit, the air was filled with fabric, chalk dust, and the faint scent of lavender from an old candle. Rolls of cloth leaned against the walls like silent sentinels. A mannequin stood in the corner, half-dressed in silk, staring blankly ahead. Catherine stepped over the threshold as if entering a church. Her gaze darted across the space, the cluttered workbench, the sewing machine still humming faintly, the sketches pinned to the wall. "You live here?" she asked. "I work here," Michael corrected, setting down his satchel. "Living is negotiable." He gestured toward the narrow hallway. "Bathroom's the first door. Hot water still works, most days." For a heartbeat she didn't move. Then, clutching her bag, she whispered, "Thank you," and slipped away behind the door. Michael stood frozen in the kitchen, the pipes groaning as water thundered through them. He tried not to picture her behind that thin wall, washing away the grime of the streets. Tried not to imagine how different she might look once the city's filth no longer disguised her. The water ran for a long time. Too long. He passed the door twice, each time stopping, listening, heart pounding, then retreating. She deserves this, he told himself. After whatever hell put her on the street, she deserves 1 hour of warmth. When the water finally stilled, silence filled the apartment. Michael hurried to his closet, pulling fabric from hangers, his fingers fumbling clumsily. What did you give a woman who hadn't touched clean clothes in months? What shape fit a body carved by hunger? He settled on a simple dress, dark navy linen, modest but elegant, and a soft grey cardigan he'd made for a client who never returned. The bathroom door creaked open. Catherine emerged barefoot, wrapped in one of his towels, her wet hair dripping onto the floor. For a moment, Michael forgot to breathe. Without the grime, her face was startlingly young, sharp cheekbones, wide eyes, lips pale but steady. There was still exhaustion in the lines of her face, but beneath it shimmered something raw, almost regal. "Do you have a brush?" she asked. He blinked, then darted to his mother's old dresser, returning with a worn hairbrush. "Here. And, these." He thrust the dress and cardigan at her without meeting her eyes. Her lips curved faintly, almost a smile. "Thank you." She disappeared into the spare room. Minutes later, the door opened again. Catherine stepped out, the dress hanging a little loose on her frame, the cardigan warming her thin shoulders, her hair brushed and falling damp around her face. She looked transformed. Not polished. Not wealthy. But human again. Michael stared. You look." Her brow arched. "Like a person." Heat rushed to his cheeks. "Better. Like someone my mother might actually believe." For the first time, Catherine laughed. It was short, unpolished, and tinged with sadness, but it was real. "Then I guess I'm ready," she said. But Michael knew nothing about this night would be simple. The next evening, the air in Brooklyn Heights felt heavy, as if the city itself knew Michael Collins was walking into a storm. He and Catherine rode in silence on the subway, their reflections staring back at them from the darkened windows. Him in his only good blazer, her in the navy dress and cardigan. Every stop brought them closer to Mary Collins's apartment. Every stop wound the knot in Michael's stomach tighter. "You don't have to do this," he muttered, his hands gripping the strap above him. "I already agreed," Catherine said, her voice calm but firm. "Besides, you're paying me, remember?" But when the train screeched into their stop, Michael caught a flicker of something in her face. Fear, quickly buried beneath pride. Mary's apartment door opened before they knocked. The smell of roasted chicken and perfume hit them like a wave. "Michael!" Mary exclaimed, her eyes darting instantly to Catherine. For the briefest second, surprise flickered, then calculation. "And this must be..." "Catherine," Michael said quickly. "My girlfriend." Mary's smile stretched, but her eyes glinted with suspicion. "Well, Catherine, come in. Dinner's almost ready." The apartment was warm, stiflingly so, the table already set with china that hadn't been used in years. At the head of the table, a place had been set apart, and soon it was filled by Sarah Peterson. She was everything his mother wanted. Sleek blonde hair, tailored suit, perfume that clung like silk. Her handshake was cool, her smile practiced. "Michael," she said with a slight tilt of her head, "I've heard so much about you." Michael forced a polite smile, but Sarah's gaze slid past him, locking on Catherine. A faint smirk tugged at her lips. "Who's this?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "My girlfriend," Michael repeated, steadying his voice. "Catherine Moore." Sarah's brow arched just enough to sting. Charmed. Dinner began with forced pleasantries. Mary chatted about recipes, city hall gossip, neighbors. Michael tried to keep his answers short, his hand brushing Catherine's under the table, steadying her. But Sarah was relentless. "And Catherine," she purred between sips of wine, "what is it you do?" Michael never mentioned. Catherine's grip on her fork tightened, but she smiled, smooth as glass. "I'm a teacher. Literature and language. At a small private school." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Impressive. Which one?" "The academy on South Avenue," Catherine said without missing a beat. Michael almost choked. He hadn't told her that name. Had she invented it? Or had she once dreamed of being there? Mary beamed, satisfied for now. "A teacher. Isn't that wonderful, Michael? Stability. Respectability." But Sarah wasn't finished. She leaned forward, her tone sugar but her eyes sharp. "Tell me, Catherine, isn't teaching children exhausting? Or do you find some of them don't respect authority?" Something flickered in Catherine's face, a flash of memory, quickly suppressed. She straightened her back, her voice steady. "Children understand respect when it's given to them first." The silence that followed was heavy. Even Mary paused her fork midair. Sarah's smirk deepened. She had scented blood. And Michael knew, this dinner was no longer about food. It was a battlefield. High voltage sign #end of part 5. Cliffhanger, Sarah begins her subtle attack, Catherine fights back with dignity. The clink of silverware filled the silence that followed Catherine's words. Mary quickly forced a laugh, trying to smooth the tension. "Well, teaching must take patience. I always said Michael had none, he gets that from his father." But Sarah's gaze never left Catherine. It was a stare sharpened by memory, searching, peeling back layers. "Catherine Moore," she repeated slowly, as if tasting the name. "That sounds familiar." Michael's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Catherine's shoulders stiffened, but her smile didn't falter. "It's a common name." Sarah tilted her head, her perfect blonde hair catching the chandelier light. "No, I don't think it's just that. Where did you grow up?" Catherine's hands tightened around her glass. "Upstate. Small town." "Really?" Sarah's lips curved, but her eyes gleamed. "Because I could swear we've met before. High school, maybe? English class." Michael felt his stomach drop. He glanced at Catherine, whose mask was flawless, but her knuckles whitened against her glass. "Must be a coincidence," Catherine said coolly. I don't recall you. Sarah leaned back, satisfied with the crack she'd made. She sipped her wine and then delivered the blow casually, like it didn't matter. Strange. I could have sworn you used to write poetry. The words hung in the air like a dagger. Catherine's eyes flickered, just for a second, with raw pain before she steadied herself. Michael's mother clapped her hands, oblivious. Poetry. How charming. Michael, you never told me your Catherine was a poet. I'm not, Catherine said firmly, her voice almost too steady. Not anymore. But Sarah's smile said everything. She remembered. She knew. And Catherine understood that this dinner wasn't just about playing the role of a girlfriend anymore. It was about surviving a past she thought she had buried. The meal dragged on, though no one truly tasted it anymore. The roasted chicken cooled untouched, the salad wilted in its bowl. The table had become an arena, and Sarah Peterson presided like a queen certain of her victory. So tell me, Catherine, she said sweetly, slicing her chicken into perfect cubes, do you still write? Catherine's fork paused mid-air. No. Pity, Sarah continued, her tone laced with mock sorrow. Back in school, you were always scribbling in notebooks. Everyone said you were gifted. I still remember one piece you wrote, something about strength, about rising from ashes. Catherine's face remained calm, but her chest rose and fell too quickly. Michael caught it, the subtle tremor beneath the surface. Mary clapped her hands. How wonderful! A poet at the table. But Sarah wasn't finished. She leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Funny thing, though. Your masterpiece, the one everyone raved about, it ended up winning me top honors. Remember that? The room stilled. Catherine's smile froze, brittle as glass. I don't remember it that way, she said softly. Oh, but I do. Sarah's voice turned silkier, deadlier. The essay, the applause, the way the teacher cried when I read it aloud. It secured my scholarship. Changed my future. Michael's heart thudded. His gut twisted as he glanced at Catherine, whose mask had finally cracked. The flicker in her eyes wasn't just pain now. It was fury, deep, smoldering fury. You're saying you wrote that? Catherine asked quietly. Sarah's smirk widened. Does it matter who wrote it? What matters is whose name was on it. Some of us know how to seize opportunity. Mary frowned, confused. Girls, surely this is all old history. But Michael's fork clattered against his plate. He had seen enough. Sarah had drawn the knife, and she was twisting it. Mary, flustered, hurried to clear plates, her chatter frantic, a flimsy veil over the thickening tension. But Sarah's eyes never left Catherine. They gleamed like a predator's, patient and merciless. Catherine excused herself quietly, slipping down the hall to the bathroom. Michael followed a few steps, but stopped short. The storm brewing between the women was beyond his control. When Catherine returned, her composure had returned with her. But Sarah was waiting. She leaned lazily in her chair, swirling wine in her glass, and her smile widened as Catherine Saturday. You know, Sarah said, her voice dripping with casual venom, reputation is a fragile thing. One wrong slip, and all those stories you spin fall apart. Catherine's knuckles whitened against her napkin. I don't know what you're implying. Oh, don't you? Sarah's hand dipped into her sleek leather purse. She pulled out a folded sheet of paper, waved it lightly, then placed it on the table between the plates. Michael's heart skipped. Catherine froze. It was an official notice, stamped and creased, a social services record. One line leapt out like fire. No fixed address. Mary gasped. What is this? Catherine's throat worked, but no sound came. Sarah leaned in, her whisper sharp enough to cut. A teacher, you said? A woman of dignity. Or a drifter, a liar, clinging to scraps. Michael surged to his feet. That's enough. But the damage was done. The paper lay there like a wound, bleeding across the tablecloth. Mary's eyes darted from Catherine to Michael, confusion and betrayal twisting her features. Catherine finally found her voice, low and trembling, but resolute. Yes. I don't have a home. Not anymore. Her words silenced the room. For the first time all evening, it wasn't Sarah holding the power. It was Catherine, stripped bare, but unashamed. The silence that followed Catherine's admission pressed down like a storm cloud, suffocating and heavy. Mary Collins sat frozen, napkin clutched in her hands, her face pale with shock. Michael stood stiff, his fists clenched against the table as though he could crush Sarah's smirk with sheer force. Then, piercing the air like a siren, Sarah's phone began to ring. She glanced at the screen, her lips curling with satisfaction. Perfect timing, she murmured, pressing speaker. Sarah. The voice boomed through the room, deep, authoritative. Councilman Richard Peterson, her father, a man whose shadow stretched through every corner of City Hall. Where are you? At dinner, Dad, Sarah said smoothly. With Michael Collins. Catherine Moore. Her eyes flicked with cruel delight toward Catherine. You remember Catherine, don't you? From school. There was a pause, long enough to make the room colder. Then, I told you not to involve me in your petty games. His tone was clipped, furious. Not petty, Dad. Important. You should know who Michael's brought home. Catherine claims to be a teacher. But I have proof she's. Enough. The roar on the line made Mary flinch. Even Sarah's smirk faltered. You think I don't remember? Peterson's voice lowered, venomous now. The essay. The switch. I buried that scandal for you once, Sarah. Do you have any idea what it would do to me if it resurfaces now? Michael's breath caught. Catherine's eyes widened. Sarah paled. You told me to take it, she began, but her father cut her off. I told you to succeed. I didn't tell you to wave old sins around like a banner. His voice seethed. Do you realize people watch me every second? If the truth about that exam ever leaked, if they learned you stole another girl's future. Dad, stop. Sarah's voice cracked, desperate. But it was too late. His words hung in the room, undeniable. Michael turned toward Catherine. Their eyes locked. The truth had broken open, raw and irrefutable. And in that instant, Sarah Peterson was no longer the predator. She was the cornered prey. The room felt scorched by silence after Richard Peterson's voice cut off. Sarah fumbled with her phone, her perfect mask shattered. For the first time that evening, she looked small, a child caught in a lie too big to bury. Mary Collins pressed a trembling hand to her chest. Is this true? She whispered. Her eyes darted between Sarah and Catherine, desperate for a denial, a lifeline, anything. But Catherine's voice was the first to break the quiet, low but unwavering. Yes, it's true. The essay, the scholarship, the future I worked for, all of it stolen. By her. By her family. Sarah's lips curled back, but the venom had lost its sting. You can't prove anything. It's your word against mine. No, Michael's voice was sharp, commanding. It shocked even him. He stood straighter, shoulders squared, his gaze locked on Sarah. It's not just her word. I heard it. From your own father's mouth. And I'll never forget it. Sarah flinched as if struck. Michael turned to Catherine, his voice softer now but no less firm. You've carried this weight alone for years. Not anymore. He reached across the table, taking Catherine's hand in his. The gesture was simple, but it burned through the air like fire. Catherine's eyes widened, shimmering with something she hadn't allowed herself in years, hope. Mary gasped. Michael. No, Mom. His tone silenced her instantly. This dinner was never about Sarah, or her father, or whatever future you thought you could buy for me. It was about truth. And I choose her. Sarah rose from her chair, fury boiling through her. You'll regret this, she spat. My father. Your father is already drowning in his own lies, Michael cut in, his voice like steel. And you. You're nothing but a thief wearing pearls. Sarah's face twisted. For a moment, Michael thought she might lunge at him, at Catherine. But instead, she grabbed her purse, her heels clicking like gunshots as she stormed toward the door. The slam rattled the walls, but the silence that followed felt like release. Mary sat speechless, staring at her son and the woman beside him. Catherine's hand trembled in Michael's, but she didn't let go. For the first time all evening, the battlefield wasn't filled with enemies. It was just them. The slam of Sarah's departure echoed long after her heels had vanished down the hallway. The apartment seemed to exhale, the tension releasing like steam from a boiling kettle. But what it left behind was not peace. It was wreckage. Mary Collins sat hunched, her face pale, her hands wringing the napkin to shreds. "My God," she whispered, staring at Catherine as if seeing her for the first time. "Homeless, betrayed, and still you walked in here with dignity." Her voice cracked. I thought you were lying. I thought you were another scheme. But it's Sarah who," she broke off, covering her mouth. Catherine shifted in her chair, her shoulders trembling despite the calm mask on her face. She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. Nothing I say will change what was taken from me. My future, my home, my name." Her voice faltered, but she forced it steady. "All ashes now." Michael squeezed her hand, harder this time. "Not ashes. Not anymore." Outside, the rain began to fall, a steady rhythm against the glass, soft at first, then growing heavier, like the sky itself was weeping. The sound filled the silence, wrapping them in something strangely intimate. Catherine pushed back from the table suddenly, standing as if she couldn't breathe in that room another second. "I should go." "Go." Michael rose with her. "Go where?" "Back to the streets. To an alley in the rain." "I'm used to it." The words cut, but they weren't proud. They were tired, raw, the confession of someone who had fought too long and had nothing left to defend with but resignation. Mary's chair scraped against the floor as she stood. Slowly, she crossed the room and, with hands that still shook, reached out to touch Catherine's arm. "No. You won't go back. Not tonight. Not ever, if I have anything to say about it." Catherine froze, stunned. The tears she'd swallowed all night finally rose, blurring her vision. She covered her face with both hands, but the sobs broke free anyway, shaking her thin frame. Mary did what Catherine's own mother never had the chance to do. She pulled her into an awkward, desperate hug. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered, her voice trembling but sure. "Not alone." Michael watched them, his throat thick, his heart burning. For the first time in years, he felt as though the rain outside wasn't drowning him but cleansing the world around him. Months passed like stitches sewn into fabric, each one small, almost invisible, but together forming a pattern neither Catherine nor Michael had ever dared to imagine. The spare room in Mary Collins's apartment, once cluttered with dusty boxes, became Catherine's haven. At first, she slept lightly, waking at every sound as if expecting the street beneath her again. But slowly, with time, the fear ebbed. The warmth of clean sheets, the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen, the steady rhythm of Michael's sewing machine, these became her anchors. She helped Mary with groceries, listened to her stories, and soon Mary stopped seeing Catherine as the stranger Michael brought home. She began to see her as the daughter life had never given her. And Michael saw more than survival in Catherine. He saw resilience, intelligence, a quiet strength sharper than any needle in his workshop. Together they restored not just dresses, but dignity, hers, his, even Mary's. The day Catherine finally stepped into the workshop as more than a guest, Michael felt his chest tighten. She placed her hands on the fabric, her fingers steady now, no longer trembling with hunger or cold. "I could help," she said softly. "I used to love working with detail." He smiled, handing her a piece of chalk. "Then help me draw the lines. We'll stitch something new. Together." Spring bloomed in Brooklyn. The rain gave way to sunlight that spilled through the windows of the tiny workshop, illuminating bolts of fabric like stained glass. And in that light, Catherine and Michael built more than garments. They built a life. One evening, when the city lights shimmered beyond the glass and Mary hummed softly in the kitchen, Michael pulled Catherine aside. His hands trembled, but his eyes were steady. "I don't know what tomorrow brings," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "But I know this. With you, I finally feel like I'm not patching scraps. I'm weaving a future. Will you?" His voice broke, then steadied. "Will you let me spend it with you?" Catherine's breath caught. Inside the box lay a simple ring, modest, but glinting with sincerity. She touched it, then lifted her eyes to his. They were damp, but her smile was radiant. "Ask me again in a year," she whispered, "when I've proven to myself that I deserve it." Michael's heart clenched, but not with fear. With certainty. He kissed her hand. "Then I'll wait. A lifetime, if I have to." The rain had once been Catherine's enemy, cold and merciless. Now, when it tapped against the windows, it felt different. Cleansing. Renewing. A reminder that even the most frayed fabric could be rewoven into something beautiful. Together, they had begun a new thread. Sparkles, the end sparkles. Person with praying hands, if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and give this video a like. It helps bring even more stories to life. Speech Balloon, share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. Calendar, see you tomorrow with a brand new story.